Hey everyone! Welcome back to our channel where we explore the magical, the mythical, and the mysterious. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating legends across history. Fairies. These creatures have enchanted people for thousands of years, from ancient forests to Shakespearean dramas. So sit back, relax, and let's discover how fairies went from powerful nature spirits to tiny creatures with pixie dust. Celtic origins. Fairies didn't start out as those tiny winged beings from modern stories. Nope. Their roots go way back into the ancient Celtic world, a time shrouded in mystery and steeped in spiritual reverence. The Celts believed deeply in the interconnectedness of nature and the supernatural. They saw every tree, river, mountain, and even rocks as alive, inhabited by spirits that could influence daily life significantly. They worshipped these spirits through rituals, ceremonies, and offerings, maintaining a careful balance with the natural world. Respect was crucial, because offending or neglecting these spirits could result in disastrous consequences, such as crop failures, illnesses, or even unexpected calamities. Ancient Celts often held sacred ceremonies in forests and by rivers to honor these spirits, and specific places like ancient oaks, misty lakes, and mysterious caves were believed to be particularly powerful spiritual sites. In Ireland, fairies were known as the Aos Sí, or people of the mounds, deeply connected to mysterious hills, ancient burial sites, and natural landmarks that held spiritual significance. According to rich legends passed down through generations, these fairies weren't always the small, secretive beings we imagine today. In fact, they were once mighty and revered gods known as the Tuatha De Danann, renowned for their power, wisdom, and magical abilities. After a fierce and legendary battle with mortal humans, these divine beings were defeated and forced underground, retreating into the mystical hills and sacred sites across Ireland. Now, hidden from human eyes, they became magical beings living in the shadows, still possessing immense powers and secretly influencing human events. Stories of their unseen presence endured, fueling both awe and fear among local communities, who spoke cautiously of their mysterious neighbors in hushed tones. People often feared these fairies deeply, and so they carefully avoided offending them, preferring to call them good neighbors, the fair folk, or the gentry instead. They frequently left small offerings of food, milk, or even coins outside their homes, especially during important seasonal celebrations like Samhain or Beltane, to appease these powerful beings. Many mysterious and inexplicable events, like fresh milk souring overnight, crops failing without reason, tools vanishing, or even sudden illnesses, were quickly blamed on fairies. Villagers would sometimes create protective charms, hang iron horseshoes above doorways, or sprinkle salt around homes to keep harmful fairy influences at bay. Maintaining a respectful and cautious relationship with fairies wasn't just superstition. It was considered essential for day-to-day survival and good fortune. Magic, mischief, and European folklore. Fairy lore wasn't limited to Ireland or Scotland. It spread all across Europe, each culture adding its own vibrant stories. Germany introduced elves known for enchanting beauty and mysterious allure, but also their unpredictable tempers. Scandinavian folklore gave us trolls, giant creatures dwelling in caves and forests, often depicted as dangerous yet sometimes helpful if approached respectfully. England offered tales of brownies, friendly house spirits who perform chores if treated kindly, yet could quickly turn troublesome if neglected. France contributed with elegant fairies known as Fairies, powerful enchantresses who featured prominently in romantic medieval legends. Italy brought mischievous sprites and playful nature spirits who could charm or deceive travelers. Despite the unique variations, all these fairy figures shared core traits: incredible magical abilities and a love for mischief and trickery, captivating imaginations throughout the ages. These fairies could shapeshift into animals or other people, disappear into thin air at will, and even craft intricate illusions called glamours to trick the human eye. Their magical abilities allowed them to either be unseen helpers, secretly finishing household chores and leaving blessings behind, or troublesome pranksters causing mischief like spoiling food, confusing travelers, and stealing babies. The stolen infants were replaced by eerie fairy substitutes known as changelings, strange creatures with mysterious behaviors that alarmed families. Villagers feared these events deeply and often resorted to various folk remedies, charms, or rituals to protect their homes and loved ones from such fairy interference. And if you stumbled into a fairy ring of mushrooms, legends warned you might dance endlessly until exhaustion or mysteriously vanish into their otherworldly realm, trapped for what might feel like hours but could actually be decades. People believed these fairy rings marked the locations where fairies danced at night, celebrating under moonlight. Talk about risky moves. Stories from Germany to Scandinavia filled villages with cautionary tales, teaching villagers to avoid disturbing these magical circles. Protective charms like carrying iron objects, placing salt around one's home, or reciting specific folk prayers were widespread, used as precautions to prevent fairy mischief or abductions. Despite the danger, some tales describe fairy rings as gateways to hidden realms full of beauty and wonder, tempting yet perilous adventures that fueled imaginations for generations. Romantic tales also emerged, with enchanting stories of fairies falling deeply in love with humans, often under very specific and mystical conditions. These love stories were full of magic, wonder, and deep emotional connections, but always carried a cautionary twist. Usually, the human partner had to follow strict rules, such as never revealing the fairy's true nature, never harming them even accidentally, or never speaking certain forbidden words. Inevitably, the rules were broken, often by accident or misunderstanding, leading to heart-wrenching separations. The fairy would vanish forever back into their mystical realm, leaving behind profound lessons about love, trust, and the delicate balance between the human and magical worlds. These bitter-sweet endings captivated imaginations and continue to inspire tales of romance and fantasy today. The evolution of fairies. So how did fairies change from powerful spirits feared by villagers to the glittery pixies we see today? Well, the biggest change came with Christianity. Fairies, once deeply respected and revered as nature gods, were now viewed with suspicion, labeled as fallen angels or even demons. Religious teachings actively discouraged fairy beliefs, framing them as pagan superstitions incompatible with Christian doctrine. Yet, despite this strong shift, fairy traditions persisted quietly among rural villagers who continued sharing stories, performing rituals, and passing down ancient folklore. Churches and clergy often criticize these beliefs publicly, yet privately many people still left offerings for fairies or performed rituals secretly, maintaining a dual spiritual life. This secretive continuation helped preserve fairy legends, allowing them to survive beneath the surface of mainstream religious practice, subtly influencing European culture and storytelling for centuries. Then came the Middle Ages, a transformative period when fairy stories surged into popular literature and captivated the imaginations of people across Europe. Fairy characters became more refined and regal, often depicted as powerful queens, kings, or mystical enchantresses. One of the most famous examples is Morgan Le Fay from the Legends of King Arthur, whose name literally means Morgan the Fairy. Morgan was portrayed as both a healer and a sorceress, her character filled with complexity, sometimes helping Arthur and his knights, and other times acting against them. Other medieval tales featured fairy queens and fairy knights who ruled over enchanted realms hidden just beyond human reach, often guiding, testing, or influencing mortal heroes on epic adventures. These stories not only entertained, but also taught moral lessons, bridging the gap between human realities and the mysteries of the supernatural world. Fast forward to the Elizabethan era. Shakespeare enters the scene, dramatically reshaping fairy folklore with his beloved play, A Midsummer Night's Dream. Shakespeare's fairies were whimsical, playful, mischievous, and notably much smaller than their ancient counterparts. His portrayal emphasized their magical, prankish nature through unforgettable characters like Puck, the charming trickster, and Oberon and Titania, the fairy king and queen whose quarrels influenced the natural world. Shakespeare's fairies were less threatening and more entertaining, reflecting the Elizabethan fascination with enchantment, comedy, and romance. His imaginative portrayal forever altered how fairies were perceived, planting the seeds for the tiny, winged, delightful creatures familiar to us in popular culture today. Finally, the Victorian age brought another major shift, giving us tiny, winged, whimsical fairies prominently featured in children's stories, poems, and lush paintings filled with delicate detail. Victorian artists and illustrators depicted fairies as ethereal, enchanting beings, often adorned with flower petals, butterfly wings, and shimmering dresses. Characters like Tinker Bell, created in later years but heavily influenced by this Victorian vision, became iconic symbols of childhood fantasy and innocence. This artistic reimagining drastically changed public perception, transforming the once feared and revered ancient fairies into charming, harmless, and lovable creatures. Fairies became symbols of wonder, imagination, and innocence, beloved by children and adults alike, influencing countless fairy tales, literature, and even modern popular culture today. Fairy sightings and modern beliefs. Even in modern times, fairy sightings haven't completely disappeared. In rural parts of Ireland, Scotland, and Iceland, many locals still take fairy lore seriously. Stories of mysterious lights, strange noises, and unexplainable occurrences keep fairy beliefs alive, especially among communities deeply connected to traditional ways of life. Building projects and infrastructure development are sometimes carefully adjusted to avoid disturbing fairy forts, ancient mounds, or solitary trees believed to be sacred to fairies. There are many documented cases where roads and buildings were rerouted or completely abandoned due to fears of bringing misfortune or disaster by upsetting these mystical beings. Even today, folklore experts, historians, and tourists are drawn to these fascinating sites, preserving the enchanting blend of myth and tradition that continues to captivate imaginations worldwide. Fascination with fairies remains strong, appearing in modern movies, books, and festivals. Today, there's even a revival of interest in traditional folklore as people seek a deeper connection with nature and ancient beliefs. Conclusion: the fairy legacy. From ancient spirits lurking in the wild to today's sweet pixie friends, fairies have evolved massively. But no matter their form, fairies always represent that magical feeling that maybe, just maybe, there's more to the world than meets the eye. And who knows? Perhaps next time you walk through a quiet forest or spot a circle of mushrooms, you might just wonder if fairies really are watching. Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed this magical journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more adventures into myths, legends, and folklore. See you next time, and keep believing.